God, hello. How are you guys? We, we're finally live. I have no idea what's going to happen, and I have a great big hole in the middle of my head
That's why we're late.
because I was at the hole. Oh my God, what a day! I some of you in the chat know, and some of you don't know, but I have a situation with a family member, and I had an opportunity to talk to that person today, and I was able to talk to my dad today, and so, Jason, if you're watching, hi, mom loves you. Um, uh, and so I just, I would have that conversation 100 times over and not do the live right if that, meant just talking to him for that few minutes. So that's, I'm not blaming him because if I had been completely ready like I wanted to yesterday, then this wouldn't be a thing. So anyway, we have so much action, not action. We have an action-packed show tonight. I really would like to get my girls up here because I'm not loving that hole in the middle of my head. I might have to I might, if Jack's in the chat, he's gonna go crazy, but I might have to go and move around a little bit and switch over to my Ethernet. It's never been a problem before, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. So, although there is something that's trying to download, so I'm going to cancel that download. Yeah, I know it won't be complete, and that's okay. I can live with that. So I'm going to cancel this download thing that I was doing, and that might help. I'm sure that'll help me. So 1 second, let me get this closed, and that will probably free up a lot of bandwidth, right, Jack? It's so slow, I can't even get it to close. I have the most patient. Kay, why don't you do us why don't you can you just, I mean, there's some stuff going on with Daniel. You want to talk about that for just a minute or no?
Well, I mean, so I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but Daniel's prison has been hit really hard with COVID. And so that happened last week. And so they're on lockdown, um, and it's just a drag because there's no communication. I'm not sure if he's getting, snail mail correspondence or JPay emails. I don't know if that's going through but hopefully, because that would be his only form of communication with the outside world right now. I think it was last Tuesday they started canceling all the phone calls.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah,
Daniel has expressed his defiance or rebellion, I guess you could say, about what did he tell you? Well, you told us, but I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm young and healthy and strong and muscly, and I'll be fine.
I think he thinks he's healthy, and so he'll be fine. Yeah, he's not one to be sick. He has a really strong mind, he thinks. So I don't know. I just encouraged him to wash his hands a lot, and not touch his face and tried to explain viral loads to him.
It's like this? I shouldn't.
Dude. Somebody,
Dr. Silkman, I see you in there. Thank you for coming. You need to talk to the judge. I can't talk to the judge as good as you can, Dr. Silkman. But oh yeah, so yeah, he's so Daniel's one of those young guys that, and I don't know, hopefully he doesn't get it.
I mean, he's probably right. I mean, he's already resigned that everyone in there is going to get it. And he's probably
his turn, huh?
He's probably right.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just a circumstances. Yeah, not hearing from him, not knowing. If you
You know, I was complaining. I was complaining. I had sent him a letter through JPay. Gosh, it's probably going on 2.5 weeks by now. And I didn't, and I told Cherie, I don't know if that comes into my own personal email or do I got to go back into JPay. So I thought, if he was going to write me back, and if he didn't, I was fine with that. But but I was curious. So I went into JPay, and this was after you said that, all JPay mail had been stopped as well, you thought. And so I went into JPay and there's the letter and I hadn't sent it. I'm so mad. I didn't hit the whatever thing I was supposed to do. And so when I was trying to remedy that, I ended up sending it anyway. So I don't know if and when he's going to ever get it,
Yes.
Could be a whole other century by then. So really quickly, I just want to say hi to those in the chat really quickly, because I am so appreciative of you guys sticking with me and being patient with me. Alice, how are you, my love? And my Catnit, how are you? And let's see, Alice, Catnit. Oh, Jinx, how are you, Jinx? And Becca, hi, Becca. It's so good to see you as well. And there's Jack. He's my Jack's become my technical serviceman. So how do I sound, Jack? Hopefully I'm not guitaring, because I can't get the Ethernet cable this far over. So let's see, who else is here? Cherie's here. Hi, Cherie, how are you? Mose, how are you, Mose? Thank you for coming. I appreciate that. And Jack, my technical guy, is here. And Dr. Silkman, yay! Thank you, Dr. Silkman, for coming. I'm like starting to twist arms over in Australia about what do you want to call it? Guest speakers. I have a certain DNA guy in Australia that I'd love to have come on and help us talk about DNA, because, and Dr. Silkman, since you're here and if you're so inclined and would like to join us on this panel, when you catch me doing and saying something wrong, please don't hesitate or make the comments in the chat. We'd love all of the advice and help you can give us. So today we're talking about hashtags 12 and 13 and 14, and I don't really know if we're identifying it. Cherie's done all the work on the slides, you guys. She did an amazing job. So we're going to I'm going to start with a couple of little videos that I made and talking about DNA, and then we will we'll start going through these slides, and we'll see how well we're able to help explain what the slides are about. So give me just a minute. We're going to start with this one of my little creations. And here we go. Is that showing up in StreamYard? I'll make sure I get that on the full screen.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, everybody enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
We're still fighting together, but it's torn us up in our hearts because we know that Daniel is innocent.
The jury acquitted Daniel in 5 of the 13 cases, including Shardarian Hill, who said she was raped in a hospital bed, and Carla Rains, who 7 times denied she had been assaulted before changing her story. The jury did convict Holtzclaw in 8 cases, including Janie Liggins, where the only evidence was her word in a grainy visual of the traffic stop. They also believe 17-year-old Adara Gardner, whose DNA was on Daniel's fly.
Well, I'm not a DNA expert. They told us it was DNA from the vaginal fluid from a 17-year-old. The DNA people are pretty boring, to be honest with you.
In the case of Sherry Ellis, who said her attacker was short and black, and the GPS did not match her story. Holtzclaw was convicted on all counts. On Ellis's case alone, Holtzclaw got 63 years. Tabitha Barnes, who testified on PCP, Holtzclaw was convicted on 3 of 5 counts.
Sometimes you wonder, I mean, with the stuff you hear, did we get it right? I mean, honestly, I think we did.
Is this how the criminal justice system is supposed to work in America? Why is it that they just sort of picked and chose who to believe, not based on the evidence or the facts?
We took it count by count, went over it, discussed it, guilty or not guilty, and put it in a pile. We didn't split the baby.
Some jurors admitted they were concerned by the outside disruptions, but Speaks insists it did not impact their verdict.
The subject was never breached that if we don't find him guilty, there's going to be riots like Ferguson.
For Daniel Holtzclaw, his only hope is a favorable appeal, one based on a number of issues, including the subject of misrepresented DNA, what they call the circus atmosphere, and disruptions that pervaded throughout the trial, an unconstitutionally excessive sentence, and a jury that the defense says didn't look at each count on its separate merit.
How far will you go to get your brother a new trial?
I always said I will not give up, and until the whole world hears my outcry, I will keep on going. I will never give up fighting for Daniel.
Oh, I don't know. It was just something fun I was doing. um, so that was one of the jurors that had spoken to. That was one of the jurors that had spoken to the media, obviously after they reached the verdict. And I think I'm so judgmental, I guess, and I don't mean to be, but he just kind of I don't know. He was kind of what do you think? What's the word I'm looking? I'm trying to not be offensive, but he just didn't seem like he was all with it. And I don't know. I just wish there might have been a different juror that they could have spoken to. And I know they spoke to Ron Hill, and I've watched his thing with the media several times, and he's just the exact opposite. He's been in the military and stuff like that, and so he's just kind of arrogant. So I don't know. It's maybe at some point we'll work something out with his interview. But I found him to be a little obnoxious. So, and for anybody who's listening, if you ever find the need to say the word vagina, please say vagina and not vagina. That vagina. What does he say? Vaginal fluid or whatever. I'm just like, I can't stand it when I hear him say that. And because I was making this little video, I kept hearing him say vaginal fluid over and over and over. It's like, stop. It's just driving me crazy. But anyway, so that was kind of his opinion on the thing. And he claims that there was no fear or intimidation by the protesters outside. Ron Hill says something a little bit different. But he's really just kind of talking about how tough he is, and that, I was fine. It didn't bother me, but everybody else was scared. But I don't buy it. I believe that there's had to be jury intimidation. So I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that little video, and just for a little bit of fun, and hopefully none of it was very offensive, because I told Cherie many times, I don't know about the poop, and I don't know about this, and I don't, but it was fun. So if it was offensive, I apologize, and I let me know, and I'll not do it again. So basically, though, today what we're talking about is we're going to talk about the 6 expert scientists who wrote I believe it was 96 pages, 96-page brief. And Cherie, I did find out, and it was just as simple as listening to a video, that they all did do their independent um, uh, review of the case. And so, so to me, that makes it like eight independent forensic scientists agreed that Daniel, his DNA case was really messed up, and that he needed a new trial. And I say that because there were 6 in this initial, 7, I guess. There were 6 in this panel of experts. And then we'll have next time, the premiere that we're going to do for next Tuesday will be Dr. Michael Spence. And he actually wrote a brief to the appellate judge. And oh my goodness, the appellate judge was just such a dick. He basically told in his response that basically saying, you're forensic science expert, what he has to say doesn't matter to us, we don't care. There was no ineffective, and that's what Michael Spence, or Dr. Michael Spence, did. He was saying he was trying to fight for the ineffective assistance of counsel for Daniel, and naming all the reasons why that could have been considered. And the judge was like, no, his counsel could do what they wanted to do, and they didn't do it, and that's their fault, and that's poor Daniel. So it was really rough, really sad. So one of the 7, okay, now I know why I said 8, because Erica, I can't pronounce her last name, is it Fuchs? Okay.
That's
Erica Fuchs has really very independently decided to look at the case and to look at the DNA, because she didn't know the family. And I did know at one time how it was that she came across the case, and now I don't remember, but I know Kay will know.
She said that on the day of Daniel's sentencing, she saw an article about it online. And that was the first she had heard of the case. And that because it involved DNA and allegations of sexual assault, which are 2 of her interests, and a shockingly long prison sentence, she wanted to learn more. And so she began reading articles about it. And then she approached the family and asked if she could look at it, if she could look at the DNA.
Right.
So, and she's been involved ever since in a big way.
In a big way, yeah. She's amazing. I aspire to meet her someday. I don't know if I will, but I would love to meet her someday. Really nice lady. Dr. Silkman, I believe I shared information of hers with you. So you just let me know. It doesn't matter when. You just let me know if you think you're up to doing a good show with us on DNA sometime based on Daniel's case. 263 years, doctor. Yeah, 263 years. It's insane. It's unconstitutionally unfitting. So we're going to look at this other video that I made that's going to, if you haven't already had some experience meeting or seeing who Erica Fuchs is, this just comes from a news report, but I have different ones as well. I just didn't, and maybe I can have some of those ready for next week. But this will you'll be able to at least see Erica Fuchs and in this interview, I think she's speaking over the phone, so it's kind of hard to hear and understand her, but here we go.
More questions about the conviction of a cop on charges he sexually assaulted and raped women.
Fox 25's Phil Cross has been working to uncover what was discussed during secret court hearings in the appeal of Daniel Holtzclaw. Tonight, he shares the story of the woman who uncovered questionable activity by the Oklahoma City Police Lab that could cause changes in the case. This story is only on Fox 25.
DNA doomed Daniel Holtzclaw. From jury members who have spoken publicly since the trial to members of the public who followed the case, the finding of DNA belonging to one of the victims on the inside of Holtzclaw's zipper was a key to declaring guilt. But it would be a biologist from Iowa who discovered the jury and the public were not told the whole truth about that DNA. Erica Fuchs read about the case online. DNA is in her area of expertise, and she was surprised so little was available about such a crucial piece of evidence. She contacted the Holtzclaw family to see if she could view a copy of the laboratory reports.
Right away, I could see that both samples had a Y chromosome in them. So this told me that there was DNA from at least one male in both of the samples.
Prosecutors did tell the jury that Holtzclaw's DNA was not found, but Fuchs says that wasn't even scientifically sound. In fact, there were multiple contributors to the DNA, but the jury only heard about one.
Those two samples during the analyst's testimony, she said had no evidence of male DNA in them, but actually both those samples did.
The presence of male DNA could mean a lot of things. It could be proof of an unknown male victim. But Fuchs says the very small quantities of DNA found make it much more likely it is evidence of innocent DNA transfer that happens when you touch an object someone else has touched. There's also another possibility.
The sex crimes detectives were handling items in ways that could have led to DNA transferring to the fly of the pants.
During the secret court hearings that even Holtzclaw's appeals attorneys were not allowed in, we learned DNA was a topic, and the supervisor in charge of DNA at the Oklahoma City Police Crime Lab was present for 2 days of the closed-door meetings between prosecutors and the judge. And we know this secret hearing was ordered just days after the appellate court received a request by Fuchs and other DNA experts who wanted to provide expertise on the scientific errors in the case. Bill Cross, Fox 25 News.
The court ultimately turned down the request by forensic and DNA scientists to submit a brief on the case. No decision has been reached on whatever was discussed in the public courtroom out of the view of the public.
So I'm really sorry that was so bad. It had nothing to do with bandwidth, Mr. Jack. It was that was a poor quality video to start with, and yeah. So maybe it had everything to do with bandwidth. I don't know. You can scold me later. Anyway, now what we're going to discuss is these slides. The information on these slides come from the brief written by the 6 expert scientists. So we'll get that started, and I'll we'll kind of introduce those guys to you as well a little bit. So here we go. Cherie's going to help me out with this one. Okay, you can read stuff too. So let's see if I can do this there. All right. Okay, so this, like I said, this is just some information about these 6 renowned DNA scientists, and they are all leading experts in their own individual fields of different types, psychology and just different things. But we'll talk about those different ones here in just 1 second as I flip through these slides, which is also another thing I'm still learning. So. Kay, are you able to read that? Is that readable for you?
Sure. Sure. Interest of the forensic expert panel. experience with proper use of the scientific method and the analysis of forensic DNA and serology evidence. Do you want me to just go through all of them? Concerned about the improper use of forensic evidence that caused a miscarriage of justice and
And you stop, smart ass. And no.
and the tipping of the scales of justice.
Sure, yeah, that works.
I feel like I'm playing hangman.
Okay, and red arrow pointing to the scales. Next.
Know that miscarriages of justice based on misleading DNA evidence are fundamentally unfair and harmful to the entire judicial system.
Okay. Then these are the different scientists that these are the 6 different scientists that worked on that brief, and that's Peter Gill, and we'll talk about some of their their specifics in just a minute. This is Jane Goodman Delahunty, and I believe Dr. Silkman, I believe she is from Australia, if I'm not mistaken. So this is Susanna Ryan, and she's that name should be familiar to you if you've watched any of Michelle Malkin's things. Susanna Ryan owns her own scientific lab in Southern California. This is Moses. Oh gosh, I don't know how. If anybody knows how I can do slides without that stuff showing up, that would be awesome because I can't figure it out. This one down at the bottom left is Moses S. Shanfield. And then in the middle is George Shiro. And then on the right corner is the very handsome Brent Turvey. I have a crush on Brent Turvey. He's very handsome. Cherie, are you able to read those, or are you not in your right place? Is she missing? Oh, she's waiting to get back into the stream. So sorry, Cherie.
Could you go ahead and do that?
Oh, you bet. Of course. So Peter Gill has a PhD in genetics and zoology, specializes in DNA, and he worked on the Amanda Knox case. If that name was sounding familiar, that's who that is. Jane Goodman Delahunty has a PhD in psychology and law. She specializes in jury misperceptions of expert scientific evidence. We needed her in OKC. And then, of course, Susanna Ryan has an MS in forensic science, specializes in forensic DNA and serology. She can actually do serology in her lab in Southern California, because I know there's not very many places that can do serology, but she can. Moses S. Shanfield has a PhD in human genetics, and he specializes in forensic DNA. George Shiro has an MS in forensic science, specializes in DNA and serology analysis. And then the ever attractive Brent Turvey has a PhD. I'm getting all tongue twisted just saying his name. Brent has a PhD in criminology and an MS in forensic science. He specializes in criminology, criminal justice ethics, and law enforcement corruption, and he took part in the West Memphis 3 case, if that name was sounding familiar to you. So that's kind of, I'd say these guys are pretty legit, and they were qualified to write this brief to the judge. But if I didn't already mention it, or if you didn't already know, that was, I did, Jack. But I did the other one too, though, so I don't know. Anyway, I can't be reading the chat and trying to do a show at the same time. So the amicus brief. God, thank you, Cherie. It's the amicus brief. I couldn't remember what it was called. Geez. But oh my God, I lost my whole train of thought. I know there's squirrels dancing around me, and some of them are throwing up shiny objects at the same time. So, um, anyway, so these guys are all completely legit, and I really, and it has nothing to do with my little crush, but I really was impressed with Brent Turby and his. You know, it's hard to. I took one criminal. I studied criminal justice. I got a BS degree in criminal justice, and I had to, one of my courses that was required was criminology. That was a semester class, and it was hard. It wasn't. It was probably one of my most interesting courses, but it was really difficult. And then when you put in also criminal justice ethics is not, for me anyway. Well, practicing ethics isn't the difficult part. It was learning about the ethics that is more difficult. But then he's also got experience or work in law enforcement corruption. So we really need Mr. Turby on all kinds of cases that we're talking about. So all of these guys are like completely above the board legit in what they're doing to do this amicus brief. DNA misrepresentation equals manifestly unfair. Equals manifestly unfair. Misrepresentation of DNA evidence is especially pernicious because of the immensely persuasive effect DNA evidence tends to have and its inherent aura of conclusiveness. And we all kind of know that in this day and age, DNA is where it's at for a jury. They want to see DNA in a case, and they don't want to hear about it because it's so difficult to understand for the average layperson. And when we were doing the trial readings in Stephen's case, when we had to, oh my God! Oh, and we have the good crime analyst here, crime lab analyst here with us today in our chat, Cherie Colhane. That was the biggest bunch of bullshit to listen to, and we kind of determined after we were done with that part of the trial that there's a lot of filler, a lot of BS filler that she was, just that. The state was giving her all these opportunities to explain all this crap that really wasn't necessary in the trial, but it's done to kind of wear the jury out in one sense, confuse the jury, and and if you've got a DNA crime lab analyst, that's a tongue twister. On the stand. And another thing we noticed too, Cherie Colhane was an expert witness. And when I say expert witness, I don't mean an expert in her field. I mean an expert on the witness stand, because I don't know if Jack or Dr. Silkman can recall exactly, or anybody really, how many trials she had testified in as an expert witness. And so to me now, when they say expert witness, it's not about how good they are in their field. It's about how many times they've testified, usually for the state, because every time they do that, they're honing their skills as a professional witness. Maybe that's a different word I could use, professional witness. And so that was kind of one of the things that we talked about quite a bit after we finished doing her part, was that she just had all that filler crap, is what I called it. And I don't know why, but I can't remember now. Was it Norm Gahn that did the direct on her? I think it was Norm Gahn, but he just let her get away with it. Just let her, just give her, kind of throw her out a piece of bait and just let her run with it and say whatever, she could say to fill in the time. And, so when you get an expert like that on the witness stand, the jury's like sucking it all in. They're just like, oh my God, this is an expert. She has to be the only one in this room that knows what they're talking about with the DNA. I believe her. So that's kind of what happened with Sherry Culhane, and I suspect with what little I know about Elaine Taylor's testimony, it was the same with her. I believe she also, I don't know how many times Elaine Taylor testified, but I do believe that she did a lot of BSing and filling in and lying and everything else as well, just to confuse and bore the jury. So, well, in Mr. Speaks, the juror even said that, they're kind of boring, anyway. So I have to agree with him on that. Kay, are you able to read this one?
I am. The DNA evidence from the fly of Mr. Holtzclaw's uniform pants was highly prejudicial, but had little probative value because it was consistent with non-intimate DNA transfer, and crucial, accepted forensic science steps were omitted during evidence collection and testing. Because of the belief in DNA evidence as infallible, because of the belief in DNA evidence as infallible, errors, mishandling, misuse, and manipulation of DNA evidence is absolutely intolerable. Misuse of DNA evidence is not always a harmful error. DNA evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, and wrongful conviction.
I think it says harmless error.
Harm.
I could be wrong. Harmful. You said it's not always harmful.
All right. Maybe
I would argue that it is. But I'm nobody, so it's fine. So yeah, that Kimberly, I should have included all of her credentials as well, but I apologize, I didn't. But she's absolutely right.
I can't read right now.
What's that?
Apparently, I can't read right now.
So the next time I say, Kay, can you read that? You're going to tell me no?
No, probably not.
I know you won't. Yeah, I know you won't. I kind of like that last part where she says misuse of DNA evidence is not always a harmless error. And we know that, DNA evidence can lead to, I think they're all hand in hand, none more none larger than the other, but the prosecutorial misconduct, which leads to the wrongful conviction. The prosecutorial misconduct, and by the way, we're going to get back to reading Mark Furman's book this week. But when you read in his book, of course, when he's talking specifically about Bob Macy and Joyce Gilchrist, there's references, and also in Blind Injustice. Those two books for me have become like partners, like they're like little walking buddies, because Mark Furman's book is much shorter and it's about a specific place, and a couple of different, people involved in the police department, Bob Macy and Joyce Gilchrist, but where Blind Injustice is just like phenomenal. I think most of us in here have listened to it and read it, or both. So, but the same thing, we know that prosecutorial misconduct, and I believe it's in Blind Injustice where Mr. Godsey speaks about the police, different people, law enforcement officers, or the prosecutors, or just different people kind of literally standing over the shoulders of some of the crime lab analysts. And, the way that they word the things that they, I really need you to get this done quickly because it's going to tell us that Mr. So-and-so, his DNA is on that item, and we need that for trial. We need to be able to have that for trial so that we can, show. And it sounds kind of innocuous at the moment, where it's like, not really it's kind of one of those little hidden messages in a sense. And if you're not like thinking about it in that way, or picking it out or something, trying to pick things out like that, you don't really realize it, because it's just kind of the way it's said just sounds like a normal way to say something, but it really means something when they're saying those kinds of things. And what it means is usually not good for the oftentimes innocent defendant. So the DNA evidence had a valid, non-sexual explanation, non-intimate DNA transfer, and thus had minimal probative value. They said a reasonable explanation for the DNA matching the profile on Daniel's uniform pants is that it resulted from indirect transfer of the accuser's non-intimate skin cell DNA, which refers to DNA deposits that are invisible to the naked eye, are left behind on surfaces due to non-sexual epithelial skin cells. But I can now say oh, never mind. Oh God, never mind. I could say it last night. I can't say it anymore. Now that I'm trying to say it to everybody. But anyway, basically this not the minimal probative value. The accuser of the particular that owns the DNA is the 17-year-old girl, and in her police report, she says she reports that he picked my purse up and he dug through my purse. I don't know what he thought he was trying to find, and she was just so we know that he had went into this young lady's purse and was digging around. You guys have seen it when police officers are digging through backpacks or purses or whatever. Everything they're touching in that bag, is very high possibility that they're picking up that person's DNA or somebody else's DNA that used the comb, or just any number of different people's DNA that they can be picking up, and it's just really kind of scary because you never know whose DNA you're going to pick up out of those bags and things. Now, what I've seen those kinds of things done, I've seen them wearing gloves, but I know Daniel wasn't wearing gloves, and I don't believe it was like a practice to for officers to do that. So no gloves, and you're just going through and hoping that you don't get stuck or whatever, but you're never saying, hope I don't get anybody's DNA on me. And so, maybe that needs to be a thing now. I don't know. But any pants pockets. Now, when that accuser was stopped and talked to that night on June 17th, there were two other people with her. And one of them, their street names were Chocolate and Face. I know it just sounds like the most amazing names on earth, but and I think I have a slide in here in a little bit that's going to talk about them a little bit more. But in case I don't, Chocolate is was a 19-year-old female, and Face was a man in his 40s, a 40-something-year-old black male. And the three of them were walking down the street, and Face and Chocolate, it's hard to say those with straight face, they had begun to fight and argue rather loudly, I guess, in the street. And so a neighbor or something had called to report a domestic violence thing. But at any rate, that was what ended up kind of the beginning of how that whole thing went down. But when he searched the Face and he searched Chocolate, in pants pockets and things, because I think most of you remember that there's DNA, male DNA on the fly of Daniel's pants, which brings me to, I don't know why I closed that video, but I sure did. Oh no, I didn't. Yeah, I did. Oh God, it was so much trouble finding it the first time. I don't know if I want to mess with it. Let me go to, I'm going to go to the next slide, Kay, if you can read. Can you? Will you? Do you mind?
I can try.
Reading?
I can try
Okay.
to read.
I don't know. I don't know that much. Okay, there you go. And I'll look for the slide.
We are concerned that the DNA evidence's probative value was reduced further by the omission of critical forensic science steps during evidence collection and testing. The state did not follow the crucial forensic science steps of developing, investigating, and testing alternate evidence collection and analysis to distinguish among three hypotheses that could explain the DNA evidence. DNA transfer possibly from Daniel's hands to contamination on the fly of the pants. Yeah, obviously I really can't read.
Stop. Yes, you can. I think it might. Oh, I can't believe I closed that. Damn it. It's gonna be all jacked up in here. Yeah, I figured. Oh gosh. Well, you know what?
Is it in your recent?
No, I think it's fine. I think it's not a big deal. So detectives only collected the uniform pants and belt, but not the underwear, and they didn't request or demand or get a warrant for any penile swabs that could have offered more data from the hypothesis. Now, having said that, I don't know. I just think it should always be, because at this point, we're talking about Janie Liggins is all that we're really talking about. The night that, or the afternoon that they took Daniel's uniform pants. So, what's her name? Janie Liggins she only claimed that he, oral sodomy. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. And she said that she was never raped vaginally. So, so there was no claim of that. However, I just think that anytime there's a sexual assault accusation, that you should just be a part of it. It just should be a part of the investigation. But they didn't do a penile swab, or they didn't take his underwear, because Kim Davis believed, well, hopefully he took a shower and put on clean underwear. Well, he probably did. But even if those underwear were in the wash, I feel like they still should have taken the underwear and anything else from Daniel's house that they could have. They just didn't do it. They just took the only thing they took, or at least the only thing that we have any reports of that they took, was his uniform pants and his belt. Was there other physical evidence that you know of, Kay, besides those two items?
No. No, they just took his pants and the belt. That's it.
Yeah. So at that point, though, they did. What's that?
Well, I mean, not his underwear. It's just mind blowing that they didn't take his underwear, and that when he gave them permission to take anything or do anything, they drove him home and dropped him off, but they didn't go inside to collect his uniforms. I mean, you'd think a serial rapist,
Yeah.
would be interested in that. I mean, didn't Monica Lewinsky have her dress dry cleaned and it still had DNA on it?
I believe so, because it was months later, wasn't it, or a year?
I thought it was years. I don't know. I don't know the time, but just that it had already been dry cleaned.
Mm-hmm.
So they just didn't. I mean, it is really clear that they just didn't want to introduce anything into the case that could be exculpatory for Daniel. So they didn't.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes to what we believe there was, the confirmation bias. But I feel like confirmation bias is something that you don't do intentionally, really. That it's just kind of psychological, or that it happens sometimes for people when they don't even realize they're doing it. So that's kind of like so when they say that Kim Davis and Rocky Gregory had confirmation bias, that's like an out for them, and I don't like it. I don't believe I don't believe that it was a, a psychological or a mental thing that they just didn't realize was happening. I feel very strongly that they intentionally um, had their heart set on getting Daniel for this. But that was what I was going to say about the penile swab. So if we're going to go just on what we can't, the only one that I believe, except for Sherry Ellis, well, it may be Terry Morris, but we don't know about those ladies yet. We don't know about them. So doing a penile swab basically for Janie Liggins, I get that it wasn't, a thing that they would do, but at that time.
But they did know about, remember, they did know about Terry Morris, because remember later in the interview, Rocky says, oh, and we have another girl and she's claiming the same things. So you would think that both of the detectives would have wanted whatever they could get to try to test it. But I mean, we've talked about it before. I really think the meeting that they had before Daniel came in for his shift, I think it was determined at that meeting that he was going down, and that's exactly what happened.
I agree. I completely agree with that. That's the thing that makes the most sense, really. And it wasn't because I don't believe it was because there was jealousy or, I just think that Kim Davis and I think Kim Davis, well, Tim Musney as well, they were just like, it was all about ego for them. I think, not all, but I think there was a lot of ego involved in it for them as well. So, and number 2 on here, the state's forensic analyst completed no tests for body fluids, not even the use of an alternate light source, which she could have done, which they have in their labs. And she did say that she used a powerful light under a high-powered magnifying glass, which is great, but there's still, Susanna Ryan says, there was still a lot of other things that they could have still be doing. And I guess I'm different. I'm thinking if I'm going to try to catch somebody and they've got some DNA that they've left, I'm going to do everything I can to get as much evidence as I can, or as much DNA as I can, so that I can say, there's no room for doubt here, because we did every single test available to us and it all still, came to the same conclusion. But Elaine Taylor didn't do that.
Another thing that Erica Fuchs said when she first was learning about the case, she said, I learned that the only forensic evidence was described as skin cell DNA, matching one complainant, a 17-year-old teenager, and it was found on the fly of Mr. Holtzclaw's uniform pants. I wondered why Mr. Holtzclaw was convicted of sexually assaulting 8 women out of 13 whose allegations went to trial, when there was only forensic evidence from one individual. I also learned that there were other people who had made false allegations against Daniel, so their allegations never went to trial. So that's just another thing that really kind of drew her into the case and made her want to learn more.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, she sure did. She's she's done the incredible work, focusing on his case and trying to get information and get to the bottom of it, really, because she's pretty committed to it. And, there's a lot of respect for that, in my opinion. So I actually have the video itself. I don't want to bore everybody with the whole video because we've all seen it, but I do want to kind of just skim through it a little bit. And because I just really got a really big kick out of Brent Turvey's reactions in this video. But I also want you to see Susanna Ryan. And I believe right here where it's going to start is going to be, is that sharing that? No, it's not. Hold on. Okay, let's see. They should just assume all of them are going to be audio. Okay, this is going to start right where Susanna Ryan starts talking about the DNA evidence and what she would have done. And remember, Susanna Ryan was on this panel.
Like, did any of the DNA on Daniel's pants derive from saliva that you might expect after an oral assault? We traveled to Southern California to get answers. There we met with Holtzclaw Forensic Report co-author Susanna Ryan, who broke it all down for us. She showed us step by step some of the crucial errors she believes that OCPD Crime Lab analyst Elaine Taylor made based on testimony and lab reports.
One of the things that you honed in on was the way that the crime lab analysts tested the pants. So we have a pair of pants here, and we wanted to have you explain what she did right and what she did wrong.
So this is a pair of pants that would be similar to the ones that Daniel was wearing. They were described as navy blue uniform pants. She looked at the pants visually. She used a light, kind of a bright light like this. She did mention that she used a magnifying glass. And what she was doing at that time was looking for any stains, visual stains. This is known saliva on here. That wouldn't always show up on these pants, it is showing up. But if you don't see any staining, then the next thing that you're going to want to do is look with an alternate light source. So when you put on the orange glasses and you have this alternate light source, what happens is after you shut out the lights, you're actually seeing fluorescence from certain body fluids. Okay? So when the lights go out and you have an alternate light source, certain body fluids will fluoresce. In this case, there's a little bit of fluorescence, a little discoloration here in this area. Mm-hmm. You would also want to check the inner fly area. So there are additional stains that you're not seeing with the naked eye. In this case, the allegations were oral assault. And so saliva is one of those body fluids that does fluoresce. So in my opinion, that is one of the things that should have been done in this case, a simple alternate light source examination, which would help you visualize not just saliva stains, which she was aware there was an allegation of that, but vaginal fluid also fluoresces.
Why wouldn't she use an alternate light source?
I don't know. Again, it's very common practice. There are some tests that are not as common. A test for vaginal fluid is not as common, but a saliva test is common.
So if the crime lab analyst had used an alternate light source and it had lit up to show saliva, what would the next step be?
Many different fluids will fluoresce. So now you want to try to narrow that field. What is the fluid? In this case, again, the initial allegations were oral intercourse. So a logical step would be a saliva test. What it does is it actually gives you a blue coloration if saliva is present. So this is a neat saliva stain. It's very dark blue. On the other hand, if you had a negative, and holding it up here, you've got the blue in the bottom, but it hasn't reacted with anything. So that's why it's clear.
Gotcha.
However, this test also is pretty sensitive. This is a 1 to 100 saliva stain, and you can still see that kind of faint blue coloration. It's a quick test that can be done. It doesn't waste any sample because the cells are actually retained here in this. There's also other tests that could be done later. There were allegations of vaginal intercourse. There are not many labs that do presumptive testing for vaginal cells, but it is possible. And actually, one of the ways we can look at the cells is with a microscope. It does give you an indication or an idea of whether vaginal epithelial cells are present.
And this is important because Galen Giger, the assistant district attorney, in his closing statement, asserted flat out that the DNA found on Daniel's fly of his pants came from the vaginal walls of the 17-year-old accuser, and that it came unequivocally from quote unquote vaginal fluid. But what did the crime lab analyst do to confirm that?
Nothing. There was no serology testing. There was no testing for saliva. There was no testing for vaginal fluid. So that's scientifically incorrect. It's unsound. You can't make a statement that you have identified a fluid if you have not done any testing for that particular
So
fluid.
what would you have done?
In my laboratory, I do perform testing for vaginal fluid or vaginal epithelial cells. It's not a confirmatory test, but what you can see on the screen actually is one of the stains that I use called Dane stain. You're seeing where there's kind of an orangish color, that's the vaginal cells, whereas buccal cells, cells from your mouth, would be kind of more of a bluish color. So they are not going to look the same on the screen. Now, another test that I do that's a little bit more common is something called the Lugol's test. It's an iodine test where on this particular sample, we can add just a couple of drops. So it's a very quick test. And the vaginal cells, if present, will stain kind of a chocolate brown color, whereas buccal cells will not have that same coloration. So it actually starts reacting right away. So this is my vaginal cells and the buccal cells. So when I look at that under the microscope, what I'm seeing on the screen is a chocolate brown coloration. And so that color is an indication that you're actually dealing probably most likely with vaginal epithelial cells.
It's very distinctive looking.
Right. And the buccal cells, on the other hand, are just sort of a yellowish color. They don't have that same dark coloration. And so it's, again, not a confirmation, but it does give you an idea. And the same way, a lack of those vaginal epithelial cells would give you an indication that it doesn't appear to be vaginal fluid on the sample. This is a way to help distinguish between cells from the mouth and cells from the vagina.
They are very different. They're very distinct.
Right, visually very distinct. So again, not many labs have this type of testing, but it can be done. It can give you an indication then of what sort of body fluid you're looking at.
It's just another useful data point.
It helps to confirm or negate an accuser's story. If they're saying, listen, I was orally assaulted, here's the pair of pants, he didn't pull his pants down, there is an expectation there's probably going to be some saliva transfer.
Yeah.
So let's do the testing and determine, is saliva present? Not just whose DNA, because you can always look and see, okay, whose DNA it is, but the testing today is so sensitive that you can pick up just skin cells and you can get DNA from touch and not just from a body fluid.
And that was such an important point of the report that you and your other co-authors made.
Right.
Because it wasn't accurately or scientifically portrayed by either the crime lab analyst or the prosecutor.
Right. Another issue that I had with the analysis was it was stated that Daniel Holtzclaw was not present in the mixtures. And in fact, the report stated something different. It said it was inconclusive. We don't know who all's DNA is present. And that's the accurate statement.
I can't understand why these basic things weren't done in this case. What was the conclusion of the report?
Looking at everything, we did conclude that we didn't feel that he had gotten a fair trial. And it's our opinion that there were problems with the testimony and with the testing, and a new trial should be issued.
So that was the, excuse me, that was the finding of the, yeah, you're right, Dr. Silkman. I agree with that.
What does Dr. West level mean?
Dr. Did you know who Dr. West is, right?
I don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'll look that up.
Okay, well, yeah, it's gosh, I can't remember the name. I've watched so many shows now, I don't even know what it's from, but it's on Netflix.
Innocence Files.
Innocence Files, yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Right. He's an forensic odontologist, I think is what it's called, or that's what he claims. Dr. Silkman says that, let's see, what does Dr. Silkman say? Dr. West was a fruitcake I can't even pronounce it right now. Anyway, yeah, it's, so yeah, look it up, the Innocence Files, and look for Dr. West. I think it's the first one actually in the series. There's like 8 of them, and oh God, you just want to hurt this man, or I know I did. Yeah, bite mark analyst. So which has turned into become, known to be junk science, basically. Yeah, you got to watch that when you've got some time. I feel really bad. Kay, I say when she's got some time, just throwing this out there, not that she wants me telling her personal business, but I have
I know.
you don't want me to? Okay.
I'm kidding.
Never mind. I usually don't know. I usually tell and then ask permission. So sorry about that. So Kay, I mean, as many of you probably know, Oklahoma was hit by a really severe ice storm about, I don't know, 10 days ago, or so, a week, 10 days ago.
Yeah.
And it really caused a lot of damage on her properties that she owns, and her own home, and the farm that she lives on, and caused a lot of damage. And so Kay has been working sun up to sundown. Well, yeah, she bought herself she got a new chainsaw out of the damage. That's awesome.
I'm still in one piece.
Yeah, so she's been working I don't know where she's getting the get up and go, because I couldn't do what she's been doing. So
I just know there are only a few warm days left, probably. So that's a huge motivator.
Yeah. And then we'll be bitching about the cold weather, right?
Anyway, that's enough about me.
Anyway, yes. So anyway, and that's what Dr. Silkman's saying, that they were Dr. West style BS stuff. I got to put this back. I got to switch back to what I was sharing. Oh God. So anyway, that was just Susanna Ryan, explaining what they found, by that Daniel deserved, was not tried fairly, and that he needed to have a new trial. But again, the judge wouldn't even look at their brief after they submit, or wouldn't even allow him to submit it, if I remember correctly. So, which is just insane to me. So
that goes right back to, they didn't want anything that was exculpatory for Daniel. They stuck with that all the way. They're still doing that.
Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, how's a person? Yeah. God, no fairness and justice anymore at all. So the state did not investigate the source of the unknown female and the male DNA that could support the hypothesis of non-intimate DNA indirect transfer. Now, before I read this part, remember Kim Davis tells Michelle Malkin that, Galen Gigger, I think it was. Probably Kim Davis too. Well, even if she didn't, we're just going to say she did, because she lies, so I'm going to lie. I'm just kidding. But I'm just kidding. So kidding. Kim, I believe Galen Gigger said it, and I also believe Kim Davis said it in some way, shape, or form. But they said that you could not, wow, gosh, I can't remember exactly that you could not, that there was no such thing as trace DNA or touch DNA or something to that effect. Kim Davis said she'd never heard of it before.
She said, I've never had one single case in my career that involved touch DNA.
In all of her years of experience as a sex crimes investigator.
Lady, do you know what it is?
Yeah, and I believe Galen Gigger said something to that effect as well. If I'm not, I don't know. It's hard to know. It's so many lies that get told.
He was just being adamant that it couldn't, they were trying to get him to admit that it could possibly be transfer DNA. And he just wasn't gonna
leave any room
off of his allegation that it was sexual contact. I mean, it was from sexual contact.
Dr. Silkman, it says it's called protecting the conviction, and yeah, that makes.
Well, they've done an awful lot of that all the way through.
They sure have. Yeah, and it's disgusting. But sometimes it's times like that when I start feeling like, oh my God, we're never going to get to that other spot, but we will. We'll get over the edge. So anyway, the reason that this, so during this accuser, the 17-year-old accuser stop, there were, like I said before, there were two other individuals with her, the 40-something-year-old black male and the 19-year-old black female, who were walking with her, and they were fighting and whatnot. But they were also searched and, had pat downs and, all of those things. And so, to claim that they're, the other DNA, well, I mean, as far as naming who the other people were, I suppose that couldn't have been done. However, she did, her name's Melody. I can't remember her last name, Chocolate. But she,
Coleman.
What's that?
Coleman.
Yeah.
Melody.
Yeah.
Melody or Melanie. Melody.
Well, the police report says Melody, DIE, but who knows? Kim Davis typed it up, so take it for what it's worth. But she did do a police report. So although she wasn't making a claim of assault of any kind, it's just too bad that we couldn't have gotten a sample from her as well. But I don't know. And then the male, I don't believe, I haven't seen a report. I haven't seen that he made a report. So I can't really speak to him, but at any rate, the point is that, Daniel did do a pat down on another male, on a male and another female that day. And we'll learn later that there was also a third person on this same day, Kayla Lyles. However, we didn't learn about her until much later. But anyway, there were, plenty of people's DNA that could have been. I know they did do buckles on Kayla, I believe. So, but I don't know whatever came of that. And then number 2 down here says, we are concerned, and this is still the 6 from the amicus brief panel. We are concerned that the state's handling of the evidence could cause contamination that may have transferred DNA from Ms. Gardner and others to the fly of the uniform pants. So just 2 words. Everybody in the chat knows what I'm going to say next, right? 3, 2, 1. Boom. Surprise. It's just, I'm off the thing. Thanks. That's awesome. Thanks for telling me, guys. So yeah, Rocky Gregory. And, this is a picture that we've seen 100 times. And, but it just, it can't, you can't talk about it too much because it's just outrageous how, nobody can see me doing that, can they? It's outrageous how he, and we always talk about how he took, or, because he didn't even touch, at least at this point, he never touched Daniel's pants or belt. He left the bag, he opened the bag with his hand, left it sitting on the floor, and then Daniel just, not knowing, obviously, just wadded up the pants with the belt still in the loops, just kind of wadded them up a little bit and tossed them in that bag. And then Rocky Gregory picks it up and takes it out and does God knows what with it. But what we don't talk about is that Kim, and I showed you this several weeks ago in a different video that we had, but Kim Davis leaves the room after she just gets all shitty with Daniel and tells him that she knows he, I don't believe you. Your girlfriend said you did not have sex with her. You didn't try to have sex with her. And I don't believe you. And I'm going to go try to call her again. So she stomps out of the room. And when she comes back in, she steps in and she hands Rocky this shirt and a pair of shorts. And, it's very safe to assume that Kim Davis wasn't wearing gloves when she handed those clothes to what's his face, Rocky. And then we see Rocky picking them up. He tosses them down on the table, and then he picks them up again, and then puts it back down. And here he's telling Daniel, I don't know if this shirt's going to fit you. You're a pretty big old boy. And then he asks Daniel, do you just want to wear your uniform shirt home? what? I was just like dumbfounded that he would say that, but he did. He asked Daniel, well, you just want to wear that uniform shirt home? And Daniel didn't. He took it off and put on this little shirt. But at any rate, and I found this this meme, and I know it's from a movie, and I can't from a true story, I believe. And it's slipping my mind exactly right now, but when he's being told that the evidence says that you're guilty, he just says the evidence is bullshit. And that's kind of how I feel about Daniels. The evidence in his case was bullshit too. So I'm going to kind of skip over this one, but the state misinterpreted the DNA analysis and made arguments that misrepresented the DNA evidence from the fly of Mr. Holtzclaw's uniform pants. And we've beat that one to death as well, but that's part of the amicus brief. And then Cherie explained this to me one time, and I got it at the moment, but I'm still like struggling, like, wait, what? I just don't. The state's forensic analysts incorrectly used the presence of DNA matching Miss Gardner's profile to argue that vaginal fluid was the likely source. And then of course in closing arguments we get to hear Mr. Giger claim that it's fluids from the vaginal wall of the minor, which was not true, which is part of that misrepresentation. And then here on letter B, it says the state argued incorrectly that the exclusion of Mr. Holtzclaw as a contributor to the DNA mixtures supported a rape scenario. And like I said, Cherie's explained. I've read that little lines over and over and over, but taking the words apart and trying to add, and I just don't get how that supports a rape scenario. Cherie explained it to me, and in that moment, I was like, "Oh, okay, I get it." And now I don't get it anymore. It just doesn't make sense to me. So this is that's how I feel. Like, what? What are you talking about? I don't know.
They actually couldn't they couldn't include him or exclude him because they're just, and obviously I don't know all the terminology, but there weren't enough, I'm going to use the word markers. There weren't enough markers to actually get a profile to say if it was Daniel or if it was Rocky Gregory. And back to A, letter A, she couldn't testify to that, or she shouldn't have testified to that. She can't claim that because she didn't test for that.
Right.
So it's just ridiculous.
Well, and that's what Susanna Ryan said. You can't do that. You can't claim something that you didn't do a test for.
Yeah.
So, and it's just astounding. It's astounding to me. I'll never, even when Daniel walks free and is home and, trying to recover his life, I will never understand any of what happened that the state did to him. So we're going to hold off on this one until next week. I call these the 17Q pieces of evidence. Those go to the actual pieces of evidence that they used at trial. The state's forensic analysts, and remember, again, this is Elaine Taylor, analysts did not testify clearly about the presence and implications of DNA from at least one male. You want to kind of expound? I mean, I think we all know, but is there anything about that you'd want to expound on? Kay?
I mean, I don't really know what to say about it.
I mean, it's just basically, she wasn't, well, it was inconclusive for one thing. And rather than say that, she just kind of, from what I understand at trial, kind of, hem hot around it, I guess, so to speak, and wasn't really very clear about it. The male
I'll be interested to hear what I'm sure she would have been questioned about that in her deposition. She was deposed for the civil trial that's coming up.
Really?
It'll be really interesting when all of those depositions get unsealed and we're able to see.
I'm chomping at the bit.
What her answers are to those things.
Yes.
I'm sure hopefully they, ask her some hard questions on the stand. She's just not very smart, and
she doesn't come off as very intelligent, does she? Or maybe I don't know. I shouldn't really say that, but
and she definitely, she shouldn't be working in that field.
Right.
I just wonder how many other lives she's destroyed like this with her brilliance.
Dr. Turvey said that in that video that we were looking at. Well, I guess I still have it up there, but he said that, when Kim Davis was talking about, different things that she had done and Dr. Turvey, determined that those were inappropriate and, not probative and just like completely 100% misleading. He said that God, I wish I could remember exactly what it was, the topic was, but he said that about Kim Davis. I'd be interesting to know, like to see the other case. I'd like to see other cases that she's investigated, because if they were anything like this one, the state of Oklahoma has a problem. Well, they have a problem anyway, but
I know we've asked for those things, but they say they don't keep track of that sort of thing.
They don't keep track of anything that might be exculpatory is what they don't keep track of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then here it says that the prosecutor, and this is the famous part, I guess, really, that the prosecutor misstated the DNA evidence during closing argument. And the horrible thing about that is that the jury hung, I believe, very firmly that the jury hung their verdict on that.
Well, 2 jurors say that.
Right.
What was the biggest thing that made you guys come to guilty conclusion? And they said the DNA.
Yeah. The DNA was pretty big to them. And that just kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. The juries want to see DNA. They don't want circumstantial. They want DNA. And, they just believe it. They believe if there's an expert up there talking about it and saying it, that it must be true. And I always wonder, with Stephen's juries and Brendan's juries and Daniel's juries, God, do they look back now? I mean, do they see all this stuff that's coming out? And do any of those jurors think, oh my God, I might have got it wrong? I hope so, because that was their thing. That was what they had to decide. And, I think it's very clear, if they really, really pay attention and do the unbiased work and research, they will know that they did make the wrong decision. Again, part of the amicus brief was the DNA evidence from the fly of Daniel's pants was especially influential and pivotal in Mr. Holtzclaw's trial. Therefore, mischaracterization of the evidence was harmful. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to save this one for next week. And I think I was going to read this one out for you. DNA analysis errors and misrepresentations are especially harmful because jurors weigh DNA evidence heavily. That's kind of what she says it much better. They say it much better than I do. That's exactly what I was meaning. The misrepresentations and incorrect arguments concerning the DNA analysis were harmful in light of all the evidence, because the state built a biased investigation upon the foundation of the mischaracterized DNA evidence. that's huge. That's just like, that's just huge. I mean, these 6 experts are telling us that, the state built their entire investigation on a lie, a DNA evidence lie. And they know that, they all know that. So we'll just kind of, basically it talks about, then the brief talks about this, that the state misused DNA evidence. Trial defense counsel did not correct crucial forensic science misrepresentations and omissions. And before I move on from that, I don't know if we talked about it before on this show or not, but Scott Adams, who was Daniel's trial attorney, had hired a forensic expert, and he didn't use that expert at all at trial. And I think from what I think I had asked Kay before, when I was just so angry about that, and I think Kay had told me that Scott didn't call him because they had pretty much covered everything with Elaine Taylor's testimony, and I think that's what you had said before, Kay. You probably better correct me real quick.
Well, I think he did use the DNA expert's report. I wasn't at the trial, so I'm not sure about that, but I believe that's what I was told, is that he just used the report and didn't call him, even though he was in the courtroom.
You're absolutely right. And I remember reading, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't understand that.
I don't either. I have the expert right here next to me, but I'm just going to read his report to you, or, talk about his report with you. I'm not going to, it's just, mind boggling, because I know that Daniel must have paid a lot of money for that expert.
I mean, I can't imagine personally preparing for that case, because we've talked about this before. It's like preparing for 13 trials in one. And I don't know. I don't know if anyone could have done it justice.
Well, sure. I mean, I know I rag on Scott Adams all the time, but I mean, I just feel like there were some things. That's, to me, calling that expert up to testify is something that he had right at his fingertips that he should have used.
Yeah.
And he didn't, and he didn't, and it's done, and it can't be changed. But the thing about that is that was part of the appeal, and for ineffective assistance of counsel. And the judge in that appeal said, nope, he had the opportunity. He had the expert right there in the courtroom, and he chose not to call him. So that is not ineffective assistance to counsel. And I argue completely opposite of that. It is, because he did have the expert there and didn't call him. To me, that is an ineffective assistance of counsel. But
yeah, most of their responses were ridiculous. I mean, it's like reading responses in the Avery case. Just, they're grasping at straws.
Okay. Yep. So that, and then trial defense counsel did not correct crucial forensic science misrepresentation and omissions, such that the DNA evidence at the heart of the trial and lacking probative value was extremely prejudicial, corrupting the investigation of Mr. Holtzclaw and impacting the verdict. Mr. Holtzclaw's conviction should be overturned, and he should be given a new trial. And that was I believe that was the conclusion of the 6 experts.
Right.
I didn't do any parenthetical or, in quote citations or anything, but everything came from that amicus brief that's right there. So basically that's it's a lot of information to try to get and understand. And we've talked about bits and pieces of the DNA many times already. And, it's still just, trying to, when you see that brief, when you read that brief and you realize how much work was put into it by the experts that were a part of it, and then it was just flatly refused to be admitted or submitted or admitted. It's just like we keep saying, like Kate said many times, it's, they didn't want to do anything that might possibly exculpate Daniel. And just like the secret meetings and all of that stuff, it's just, everything was done in order to keep from any truth of the case coming out. And it's really frustrating to me when people who don't know anything about the case really, but what they've heard in the media or they've heard other people say or whatever. Well, he was convicted by a jury of his peers. Well, that jury was tainted by the lies of the crime lab analysts. I probably shouldn't say it, but the storytelling of some of the accusers or the accusers, I don't know, and just the lies based on the the prosecutor and what they said and what they the AVL and the GPS and all that stuff. Oh my goodness, there's so many lies in those. T1 has a question. What is your question, T1? Is it this one here? Needs me to ask, what would cause law enforcement to convict one of their own? Was Daniel involved? Good question. Can you see that, Kay?
Yeah, I mean, I truly just think it was the racial tensions of the time. I remember at that time how heated everything was. And Ferguson hadn't happened yet when he pulled her over in the after hours traffic stop. But other things around the United States were happening. Nothing that was huge and making national news. But that time period, summer 2014, if you just Google it and do a little bit of research, was just intense. I think, I can't remember where it is, but the OCPD brass were talking about, we've got to get control of this. I'm paraphrasing. We've got to get control of this because, and they mentioned racial tensions. So I just think, they weren't necessarily out to get Daniel. It was just a circumstance where he did pull her over. The circumstances of that evening didn't look good because he had already turned his computer off as at trial. It was shown that, that wasn't an isolated incident. It was a bad habit. It was against policy, but he shut his computer down kind of like he had a system when he got off of work, almost like, jump in the car, roll around this corner, whatever, shut the computer down. He did that every day after every shift.
And have been since the policy had been enacted for months, right? And
I think it was a month or two that apparently it was a problem in the department because there was a rule made about it. So it wasn't just Daniel doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it wasn't, they had sent an email to everyone a month or so before, but it wasn't clear if Daniel had really even read that email. And I think when you're doing a job and you're comfortable in the job that you're doing, I think you do things that aren't exactly right. Knowing that no one's really ever going to know. He didn't really feel like he had anything to hide. So I think he really didn't feel like he was doing like he was ever going to be accused of anything like this for sure, but he did stop someone in the after hour. The computer was off. She, she had a relative who worked in that same police department, who worked in Spring Lake Division. And so, before morning happened, Anthony Carter had already been the police officer, or whatever, I don't know what his rank was. He had already been called by her, and he said, you need to call 911 and file a report. So he was already kind of in the loop when he came into work the next day. I just really feel like they felt like they needed to get ahead of this thing. They needed to, they took it to the media pretty much right away. They just wanted to get ahead of it. They wanted the public to see that they were taking it seriously. And I think they figured out right away that they were going to have to sacrifice him to, avoid other things.
Avoid the rioting.
They told Detective Davis that day, the eyes of the department are on you. And, she went into that 2-hour interrogation believing that he was guilty.
Right.
So nothing right happened for Daniel. Was there jealousy, T1? There might have been jealousy with him because he had been given a coveted gang unit assignment. He had gotten a new cruiser when a lot of the other people who had been on the force longer than he were still driving the old units. But to answer your question briefly, I just think they felt like they needed to show the public, and they sacrificed him. I mean, I don't know. You wouldn't think they would do that to their own, but I saw earlier in the chat someone asking about where was FOP, and FOP didn't stand behind him, even though he was a dues paying member. They initially gave him an attorney, but the attorney that they assigned to him, her husband was the communications director for OCPD. So everything about what happened with this case was messed up. If you want to tell me that his attorney wasn't telling her husband, who's OCPD communications director, about the case, that they weren't talking about the case, I think that's crazy. But I mean, I think they just sacrificed him.
Yep, I would agree. Here's another great comment by T1. Yeah, I think what was at stake is what Kay was saying earlier. They really were just trying to, because there was some racial tensions around, not necessarily in Oklahoma, but you, like Kay said, you could see it on the news at night, in other parts of the country. And, that's, they wanted to be the department in Oklahoma that was going to, show its community that they were going to get out, and didn't matter who the person was, what color the person was, they were going to fight to protect these accusers that he was alleged to have been assaulted by a cop, and no matter the cost, because that was their face in the community was far more important than doing the right thing by their fellow officer.
And you say to build a case that large against him, I don't think they really wanted it to be that large, but they were just too stupid. What they were searching for was the match to that DNA. It was the only evidence they had. The initial accuser, Janie Liggins, the after-hour traffic stop, her rape kit came back negative for Daniel's DNA. She says that he put his hands on the car. He had her put her hands on the car. No prints on the car. Nothing about her story could be verified. She changed her story. He didn't. You know, she just inserted her sexual assault story into a true sequence of events that happened. And it was really hard to defend, you know, and they also had Terry Morris, who Rocky had, let's see, I think the month before, she had claimed that a police officer raped her. I believe she was just trying to get out of trouble. But, you know, when they decided to try to join those two and make him a serial rapist, and they only had this, they had this one profile, one female profile from the DNA from the 4 swabs of the fly of his pants. They had to find that person or they wouldn't have a case, because they've got Janie Liggins, who nothing matches. They've got Terry Morris, who accused him in what I believe is an excited utterance. And, you know, she didn't want to be tied to a rape trial. She just wanted it to all go away. She didn't end up cooperating until much later, when she ended up being in jail. And, you know, then she was willing to talk and make a deal and completely change her story. You know, so I just think if they would have been smart enough to think, oh, hey, you know, we pulled up every Black female with a criminal history and a history of drugs and prostitution that Daniel ever came into documented contact with in the course of his day. We pulled all of those people up, and we're going to question everyone that he had contact with for the last 6 months. But did they ever think, hey, we've got this DNA on his pants. He wore these pants yesterday. Let's start at the end and work backwards for the person. No, they just start going down their list, and, you know, they keep cultivating these victims, and they're doing buckles on every single one of them and not finding the match. And they finally, well, yeah. And then in the middle of all this, Ferguson happened. And, you know, so then they were really under fire. If you look at how they ramped up their investigation, if you want to call it that, after Ferguson happened, it's crazy. You can see that they really got busy. But they didn't find a Dara Gardner, the match, until I think she was either the last person or the second to the last person.
Last or second to the last, right.
So, you know, I think T1, if they would have found her, they might have
earlier.
Yeah, they wanted him to be a serial rapist because, you know, Kim Davis said you don't always get things done when you have one victim, but when you have 13 and the MO is the same and the verbiage is the same, then you can get something done. I think they would have been satisfied with 4 or 5. They wouldn't have had to work as hard. But they were too dumb. I mean, they're just too dumb.
Drama Must Remain on the Stage had said earlier that she was wondering what was in it for Kim Davis. I don't know that she felt like there was anything in it for her, but she did, Tim Musney did put that pressure on her that day and told her that the eyes of the department are on you. So she's got that little thing hanging over her. And, you know, she didn't they got awarded, her and Rocky Gregory and maybe Valerie Holman. I actually don't remember if she did, but they were rewarded for, they received awards at an award ceremony later for their work on that investigation. And, when you're feeding egos in that way, sometimes that's all the ego needs is just that public attention like that. And I believe very strongly that Kim Davis has a ginormous fucking ego.
She had had such a remarkable career, and she was getting ready to retire. So this was kind of the feather in her cap. It made her, you can just see her. She thinks she's a super detective. You just see her in all the interviews, how proud she is of herself for this.
Right.
Man.
And that's, the Holtzclaw case was, probably it was her biggest case and her biggest claim to fame. She was very proud of herself for what she did. She sees nothing wrong because the three of us, Cherie and Kay and I have talked about this before, that these women, they were all victimized, absolutely victimized, not by Daniel, by Kim Davis, Rocky Gregory, Tim Usney, Galen Gigger, and the state of Oklahoma.
We have no idea. Yeah, you're right, Rhonda. We have no idea what they said to these women to get them to become a part of the case, because, some of them didn't come along right away.
Right.
And we know, at least 2 of them were in jail when they became a part of the case. So we know what they were doing.
Right. Yes. Hopefully some of you have been able to look into the Rosetta Great videos that we've shared with you in the past. Those are astounding video interviews. Wow. Again, I feel like we didn't even cover all of it or explain any of it very thoroughly, but we did kind of want to bring you the basics of what the amicus brief was about and how it went down, and who the experts were. They were truly legitimate experts in their fields and other fields as well. And we wanted to share that with you. A lot of times we just bring little snippets of this or that clip of the video or whatever, but there are legitimate documents that show that these experts really did try to do something for Daniel. And the premiere, like I said earlier, the premiere that we'll do for Tuesday is pretty. I've read most of that, and it's quite lengthy. But Dr. Spence is he's remarkable. He's really, just his education level. I can't describe the feeling I got when I was reading his information, but you can tell when you're reading what he's written in his brief that he is, 100% legit. He's not just blowing smoke up their ass like Elaine Taylor did or Joyce Gilchrist did in her day. I would like to have challenged the judge or anybody else in the state of Oklahoma crime lab at that point. Try to just prove anything that he's saying and see how far you go or how quickly you decide to give up, because he was the real deal. So hopefully you'll learn something from that as well. We'll do our very best to get as much of the information to you from that brief without boring you to death, because it is hard to understand. But we're going to try to pick the most interesting or things that might grab our attention and give more explanation. And some of it is like what we've talked about here tonight, because he had the same opinions actually as these other 6 did. But he has a little bit of detail, and he actually gives well, and then this amicus brief, it's there as well, the explanations and the examples of where they think things were done incorrectly or falsely or not at all, and so it's also there. But Dr. Spence is he did this on his own when he was hired by the appellate defense counsel, so he put a lot of time into his response on that, and then it just got pretty much got the finger, and it's, I don't know, it's really really frustrating. But gosh, it's so hard to keep, especially when it's deep topics like this. It's so hard to keep them at an hour, you guys. I'm so sorry, but most of you have stuck with us all the whole time, and that's amazing. I really really appreciate that, because I know it's not easy. So are there any other questions or comments that anybody would like to say before we shut her down? I think we've had really good questions and comments tonight, really, already. So any more information that you'd like, or if you'd like to, look into this, the brief, or, something a little more in a little more detail, then you can find most of these things over at in our Discord, and that's Daniel's Truth. And hopefully, most of you have all already joined and you're there. And again, I'm still looking for ideas of how to get you guys involved and how we can, spice up the Discord a little bit. There's just not enough going on there for me. We also wanted to talk about the Team Daniel doing fundraising projects. And I think Kay was telling us today, I know they've asked her to help with the calendar, but there were some other things they were also trying to do as well. So are you able to share those other projects or no?
We're just putting together a calendar that, I don't know if we're actually going to use just inspirational quotes or facts from Daniel's case. I sent both things to Teresa, and I think she sent them on to Jenny for her approval. But we also, Teresa had some masks made that I think they say free Daniel Holtzclaw, or they might say holtzclawtrial.com. And so we were going to try to do some pre-orders, maybe set up a GoFundMe and make different packages depending on the giving level. So, that's one fundraiser. Last year we did a concert out here where I live, and had a silent auction, and so we didn't get to do that. That's going to be an annual event in September, but we didn't get to do it this year because of COVID. So yeah, I think we're going to have a paint. There's really, as far as people who aren't in our area, who aren't in Oklahoma, I guess the calendar, t-shirts and masks are the only fundraiser that we have going on right now.
Cool. On that topic, before everybody leaves, I wanted to say, and I haven't talked about this with Kay and Cherie yet, but I'm pretty sure they'll agree with me on it. And if not, too bad. I'm just kidding. But I, especially now since Daniel, well, not just Daniel, but everybody, they can't get their phone calls or anything, and they may not even be able to get their JPay emails. So I want everybody, there's a room in Daniel's Truth called Letters to Daniel. I would like everyone to start dropping holiday notes in there for Daniel. So there's many ways you can do it. You can write your own letter to him at the address that's in that room, or you can, you can drop a note and tag me or Kay or Cherie or Catnip or Darkside, and ask any of us to, hey, can you pass this on to Daniel for us, for the, a holiday greeting or whatever. We need to send him a lot of mail. Like he can't, that's going to be the only thing he's going to have for, who knows how long. So we want to make sure we're sending him a lot of mail, and not even just for now, but, for the holidays. It just sucks that him, Stephen, Brendan, they're all sitting in prison for things that they didn't do. And I think every time they get a piece of mail that they can open up with their hands and hold in their hands and read, I think is just a little bit more special. And, you can design a little card or a little whatever you'd like. If you would like to do that, but you don't want it to be public in that room where everybody can see it, then you can DM it to any of us, and we'll make sure. I would like to send out a little packet of letters by probably no later than the second week of December, I would imagine. That might even be a little bit late considering. Let me say the first week of December. So you've got a few weeks still. So, by the end of the first week of December, let's get a whole bunch of cards or letters or notes or messages or something for Daniel for the holiday. And we'll send them on for you, and you don't have to worry about, doing it yourself if you don't want to. And if you do want to do it yourself, even better. So that was just something I have been thinking about the last couple of days that I'm going to make sure that we do for Daniel. Of course, and any suggestions that you might have to give for us for anything whatsoever is also really is very welcome. And we're going to pick up back on the book. I'm going to read chapters 3 and 4 of Death and Justice by Mark Furman. I think I would like to do it tomorrow afternoon, maybe. I don't know how, if anybody, if we don't have, at least 3 or 4 people that want to come in and listen, then I'll, we'll do it, maybe Thursday or Friday instead, but we need to get picked up back on that. So, just keep your, eyes open for that, an announcement as well. But if that's all that, if nobody else has any other comments or, anything else to add or whatever, then, I think we've done pretty good. I think we can maybe shut her down now after 2 hours. So, thank you, Blair. I appreciate that. I guess we will just see you in 2 weeks, because next week's show is going to be a premiere. So, until then, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody. And let's just keep on moving forward and fighting for Daniel's freedom. Bye. Happy Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness. Happy Thanksgiving.